Welcome back to the Peony Patterns YouTube channel. In today's video, we are going to show you how to cut a rectangular skirt using a cutting chart. As you may have already noticed, Peony Patterns includes cutting charts within each pattern for rectangle pattern pieces such as skirts and plackets. For example, today we are focusing on the Wisteria pattern, where you will find the cutting charts on pages 14 through to 16 of the Wisteria pattern. Wisteria includes various different skirt options, hence the numerous skirts within these cutting charts. So firstly, on pages 14 and 15, these both show the measurements for the single skirt, the double skirt bottom layer, the single layer pintuck skirt, and the ruffle skirt. Page 14 provides these measurements in inches. Then page 15 provides these exact same measurements but in centimetres instead. Then page 16 of the pattern provides the cutting chart for the double skirt top layer, both as a simple top layer or the pintuck version. Now, going back to page 14, if, for example, we are making a size 4 wisteria with a single skirt, then we would use this first column here in the cutting chart that provides the measurement for either the single skirt or the double skirt bottom layer. As you can see, it then mentions to cut 2 of this pattern piece. So if, for example, we are making a size 4, we would go down in the column here that shows all of the different sizes and choose our size. So for my size 4, I would then take this measurement here, which shows that we then need to cut 2 rectangle skirt pieces, measuring 14.5 inches in length by 31.5 inches in width. The 2 pieces will then work as our front and back skirt pattern pieces. This would also be the same if you are making this single layer pintuck skirt. So if you are choosing that option, you would then move on to the second column. As you can see, this then provides the measurements for the single layer pintuck skirt. So once again, as an example, if we are making a size 4, we would then move down here to the measurements provided for a size 4, and then once again we would cut 2 of this pattern piece out. Alternatively, if you are making the ruffle skirt version, then you can simply move down to the next cutting chart. So once again, we can see that the ruffle skirt also needs 2 pieces cut to work as the front and back of the skirt. So for my size 4 example, we will then move down here to find the measurements that we need to use for our particular size. Then for the skirt ruffle, we would also need to cut the skirt ruffle pieces. Those measurements are then provided in the next column. Now here we can see that we need 4 of these skirt ruffle pieces cut. Now moving down to my size 4 example, we can then see the measurements that we need to use to cut our skirt ruffles out. Now, this ruffle skirt cutting chart can either be used as a single skirt or as the bottom layer of a double skirt. Now, finally, if you are planning on making a double skirt wisteria, then you will need to move to the cutting charts provided on page 16 of the pattern. So here we can see the cutting charts showing the measurements firstly in inches. Then, if we move down to the second cutting chart, it shows these exact same measurements again, but in centimetres instead. So, if I was planning on making a double skirt with a simple top layer, we would then use this first column here. Once again, it shows that we need to cut 2 of these pattern pieces out. Then, for my size 4 example, I can then move down here and use this measurement provided to cut my 2 pattern pieces out. But if I was choosing to sew the double skirt with the pin tuck top layer, we can then move over to the next column, which shows the measurements provided for this option. Once again, it mentions that we need to cut 2 of these pieces out. Then for my size 4 example, we can then take that measurement and cut our 2 pattern pieces out for the pin tuck top layer. Then obviously, as you are making a double skirt, you will also need to cut your double skirt bottom layer out. So that measurement was provided back on page 14, and that was the measurements provided for either the single skirt or the double skirt bottom layer. So for my size 4 example, I would then take that and cut 2 pattern pieces out for the bottom layer of my double skirt. Or alternatively, as I mentioned, you can also use the ruffle skirt as your bottom layer instead. You can also use these cutting charts to then go ahead and also cut your skirt placket. So I'm going to show my wisteria skirt now being cut as an example using these cutting charts provided. Now I'm going to go ahead and cut a wisteria skirt using the cutting charts provided within the pattern. For the purposes of the tutorial, I will continue on by cutting a size 4, as that is what I have discussed throughout the video so far, and I will be cutting a single layered pin tuck skirt. However, the following steps will be the exact same no matter what skirt version you are making. You'll simply take the measurement provided within the pattern for the particular skirt and size that you are making and go ahead and cut your skirt out using the following method. Now I'm going to go ahead and begin cutting my wisteria size 4 single pin tuck skirt out. So I need to cut 2 rectangles out that are measuring 16.5 inches in length by 31.5 inches wide. Now, as a personal preference when cutting large rectangle pattern pieces, I like to fold my fabric widthwise and then take that full width measurement of the pattern piece that I'm cutting and divide that by 2 and then essentially cut this pattern piece on the fold. It just makes it a lot more easier and manageable to work with and to cut. So for example, for my size 4, the measurement is 31.5 inches wide. So if I was to fold the width of my fabric and divide that measurement by 2, that would then be 15.75 of an inch. I would then measure that out and cut. So then when I do open this fabric up, so where the fold is, and I open that up, it will then be the full width measurement that I need. So for example, for mine, where I have that fold, if I was to then measure down that 15.75 of an inch and cut, when I then open that up, it would then be the full 31.5 inches that is needed. If you would prefer though to have your fabric fully open and cut the full width, that's completely fine, and as I mentioned, it's a personal preference for me just to make it quicker, easier and more manageable to cut. So I have my fabric here already folded widthwise, and as I mentioned, because I am folding it, I'm going to then halve my width measurement of my skirt. So the width measurement for my size 4 is 31.5 inches. Dividing that by 2, that is then 15.75 of an inch. So I have just folded my fabric, measured that out. So this measurement here from the fold to the raw edge of my fabric is now 15.75 of an inch. The length of my skirt is then 16.5 inches. So I'm going to go ahead now from this top raw edge of my fabric and measure down for the length of my skirt. Now I've just used an air erasable marker to just make 2 small marks to show you exactly then where I will cut
the length of my skirt. So we have the width, which essentially when opened up will be the 31.5 inches when I've unfolded that. And then that is by 16.5 inches in length. Now you can go ahead and cut your rectangular skirt pattern piece out using your preferred method, either a rotary cutter or scissors. So now that is one of my skirt pieces cut. Now, as I mentioned, because I did fold the fabric, once I have opened that up, it will now be the full width measurement required for my skirt, which is that 31.5 inches for my size 4 that I'm making. So now that I've cut one of my skirt pieces out, I'm now going to repeat that for my second skirt piece, as we do need two, one for the front of our dress and the other for the back. So I'm going to go ahead and repeat that for my second piece now. So I now have both of my skirt pieces cut, ready for my single layer pintuck skirt.
I hope that this video has now helped answer any questions that you may have had when it comes to reading a cutting chart, and then use those measurements provided to then cut your rectangle skirt.